Thank you very much. And we'll go here. Minimize that. Move this up here. And reduce that. There we go. Good morning to each and every one. Good to be with you, those online and in person. Happy Sunday, last Sunday in a month of September. Hooray fall, yes. So we are transporting back in time, starting off this morning in the year 2333 BC. So what's happening? What's going on? So we're taking our visual tour of the world of the Bible. And we're going to see, just as Brother Caleb brought out, the seekings and strivings of man versus the unchanging goodness of our God, which we'll be looking to in the book of Isaiah in the latter part of class. So in this year, 2333 BC, what is going on? Who are the players? What's happening? So here is the land of Shinar, Persian Gulf. There it is right there. So we have, at this point in time, in the city-state of right down here, their king is named Aannepada. Over here in Kish, their king is named Akurgal. In Lagash, over here, their king is named Gunidu. Over in Egypt, further to the left, their king, Pharaoh, is Menkaure of the 5th dynasty, 5th line of rulers there. And over here in Uruk, their king is Enundarana, who's sitting on the throne of Nimrod. Now, all these folks, even the Pharaoh of Egypt, remember, these are all descendants of Noah. And so as we're going through these generations, remember, in one sense, they're still all God's children. They are still all coming from this. God is still very interested in these people, even when they lose interest in him. And so we'll see some of that played out as we go. I listed off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Yeah. And they have their petty squabbles amongst each other and all that stuff. The usual things that happen with that.
I guess it's funny, everything they did between those times and these days, we have one president who covered the entire country.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to see, because right now, Pharaoh is pretty powerful and dominant, with Egypt being this united land now and trying to have their influence in these other areas. And we're also going to see later on, closer to the time right before Abraham gets born, a guy named Sargon the Great, who after Nimrod is the first guy to have a really expansive empire over everything. One guy over all of these little petty kingdoms and lands, because Nimrod's kingdom has definitely diminished since the Tower of Babel, and he's lost a lot of influence. And there's a story we're going to get to, maybe today, maybe not, with Armenia and one of the sons of Nimrod, and part of their famous history. So here we are, going to hop in Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine, take us back to 2333 BC. But first, a question was brought up last week that I wanted to follow up on, because I do pay attention and try to get answers when I don't have answers. So there was interest in this bead here. This bead was from that king, Aannepada, in the land of And I actually need to make a correction. This bead was not actually part of the grave findings that were there. This bead was actually in a jar that was given as a gift over to the land of Mari, where they were devoting a temple or anything. But the question I was asked about this bead with these inscriptions in this cuneiform writing here, Sumerian, Akkadian would develop after that and all that. The question was asked, well, how big is this bead that they found here? And so the answer to that question, I sought and sought. So I finally ended up going to the place where this bead is to this day. Right now, that bead is in Damascus, in Syria, in a museum there. So I thought, well, let me ask the people who are in charge of it. So I go to the website for the museum in Damascus, Syria. This is where Bashir Assad is in charge and all that stuff, that area over there today. So I go to their website to try to look this stuff up and try to get an answer, because inquiring minds in Tulare want to know. And so that's pulling up. And while that's pulling up, so here we are, but the problem is it's all in Arabic. And I don't speak Arabic or read Arabic. So they have a thing to translate there, but I'm gonna not worry about that right now. So I may look that up later, try to see about translating that. So still don't have an answer for how big that bead is. But why do we care? I mean, so we can see this bead that was from this time. What's that have to do with the Bible and what we're interested in? Well, this is not long after Shem's grandson, Shelah, has died. So we've got 3 generations alive right now. In this year, 2333 BC, Eber is now 353 years old. He was a witness to the events at the Tower of Babel. The Hebrew language is named for him. His son Peleg, born at the time of the Tower of Babel, named for that division. In his days, those lands were divided. The people were spread out. Peleg is now 219 years old. And his son Uruk, whose lifetime we're exploring right now, we're seeing the world of Uruk, because remember, every generation has their story, their experiences, and their own worlds. Uruk is now 89 years old. So these 3 generations are alive. So those 3 men, Eber, Peleg, and Uruk, are alive when this guy is having this bead made in this ceremony for all that. So this is real stuff that we can connect with these people that we know from the Bible, our spiritual and even biological ancestors. So what happens in 2333 BC that gets our class going for today? That brings us over to the land of Korea. Now, wait a minute. Where's Korea in the Bible? Remember, these are all descendants of Noah. So the dispersion from the Tower of Babel was a dispersion, not instantaneous, but over time. So all these things spread out. So there are people over in Korea. This is the legendary founding of the nation of Korea in 2333 BC during the lifetimes of Eber, Peleg, and Uruk. So this guy, Dangun, what's his story? Well, a little entertaining. Here's his story. According to the Korean legend, Hwanin, who is the Lord of Heaven, had a son named Hwanung, who yearned to live on the earth among the valleys and the mountains. So Hwanin permitted Hwanung and 3,000 followers to descend to the Baekdu mountain, where Hwanung founded the Sin-Sea city of God. Along with his ministers of clouds, rain, and wind, he instituted laws and moral codes, taught humans various arts, medicine, agriculture. Cool. Legend attributes the development of acupuncture and moxibustion to Dangun. Okay, to this guy here, to the son here. So, what's this about their Lord of Heaven and this guy coming from heaven to live on the earth? This is godless. Yes, that is the point. These people, just like we see in Egypt, just we see even in the land of Shinar, are drawing further and further away from the one true God, who's been faithful and true and had a witness and a testimony running throughout, unbroken. And so these are the seekings of man, going in all these different directions. So legend attributes the development of acupuncture and moxibustion to Dangun. Well, I've heard of acupuncture. What's moxibustion? Has anyone ever heard of that? Here is moxibustion. It is not just acupuncture. There's the acupuncture, but we got more than acupuncture going on here. Moxibustion is the burning of dried mugwort on particular points of the body. The intention is to warm and invigorate the chi or the ki in the body and dispel certain pathogenic influences. Yeah. I keep going back to, it really is simpler with God. It really is. And yes, I'll pass on that. That's actually a place in Miami if anyone's interested. Yeah. So, but that's supposed to have originated 4,000 years ago with this guy. So we have the Lord of Heaven, Hwanung, allows his son Hwanin allows his son Hwanung to come to earth. So he's got himself established here. How do we get to this guy, Dangun? Well, what happens is, according to legend, a tiger and a bear pray to Hwanung that they might become human. So he hears their prayers. He gives them 20 cloves of garlic and a bundle of mugwort. They're really big on mugwort, apparently. Orders them to eat only this sacred food. Oh, that's interesting. Only eat certain foods. Anyway, orders them to only eat this sacred food, remain out of the sunlight for 100 days. Okay. Well, the tiger gives up after about 20 days. But then he leaves the cave. The bear perseveres, and the bear gets transformed into a woman. And the bear and the tiger are said to represent two different tribes of people trying to seek the favor of the prince. So anyway, this bear woman was grateful. She made offerings to Huaneng, cool, but she lacked a husband. Soon became sad, prayed beneath the divine birch tree to be blessed with a child. Huaneng, who was moved by her prayers, took her for his wife. And soon she gave birth to a son named Dangun Wangyo. So the founder of Korea has a bear mom. So I'm not making this stuff up. Well, she bear and mama bear and the cubs. Yeah, we get that. Yes.
Yeah, when you said that, I wonder if that's where we get, don't make the mama bear come out. Because if make the mama bear come out, it's bad for everybody.
Yes. Hey, there's nothing new under the sun. We know that. So.
That's my cubs.
Yes. Oh, Satan's counterfeits. Yeah, you got that. You are so right, Sister Brenda. Yes. You know what? Man, aren't we blessed to have such wonderfully sweet church ladies amongst us? But we've all seen the mama bear, haven't we? Get unleashed, absolutely, yes. So, Dangun is a mythological figure. We have no concrete evidence that has been found of him. Yet, both North and South Korea celebrate National Foundation Day in honor of this guy. In fact, in the national sport Taekwondo, and the International Taekwondo Federation, they have different forms where they you see them doing work, practicing their moves. There are different forms. Bunse is one way it's called. Also here it's called what do they call it? Hyang. So here, what they do in one of the forms, one of the Hyang for this one, the second pattern actually represents the holy legendary founder of Korea in the year 2333 BC. Now, what's unusual for the Hyang, in this case, for this one, the punches in the one named after him, Dangun, these punches are high section, they're at eye level, symbolizing Dangun scaling them out. So let's take our field trip. And I'm going to take you to, well, Google Earth is going to take you to the mausoleum of Dangun. Yes, Brother Jim.
Was it from Noah to the man?
So from Noah to this guy right now, so we go Noah, Shem. So Shem would be the first generation after Noah. So Shem, so we go Shem, Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Ru. So Ru was the seventh generation after Noah. How many years? So this is now, the flood was in 25, let's see, I used to think it was 2893, how to jump that. So the flood was 2952 BC. The Tower of Babel was 2552 BC. So several hundred years. So about 400 years after the flood, 200 years after the, yes. And they live long lives. Yes. Yeah, they're dying in the 400s now. So yeah. But we noticed too, Pharaoh seemed to have a lot shorter lives as we were looking at their reign lengths. Yeah. Heavy lays the crown and all that stuff. Yeah. So here is the mausoleum of Dangun. So this is actually, if we take a look at this picture here, wouldn't you know it? There we go. It's waking up. This is a step pyramid. But wait a minute. How far are we from Egypt? Well, actually, we're about 8,500 miles from Egypt. Yet here we've got a step pyramid. This is Korea. Now, keep in mind that the Tower of Babel was the prototype for all that came after it. So that is implanted. But let you in on a little secret. This pyramid that was built on top of mausoleum, this pyramid was built in 1994.
I was gonna say, it looks really new.
Yeah. Now, what's significant about that is North Korea was founded by Kim Il-sung. His son was Kim Jong-il, and then his son is the current ruler, Kim Jong-un. So it's the three generations, the father, son, and grandson in North Korea. So the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, he insisted that this guy Dangun was not a legend, but a real historical person. So what happened was his archaeologists were compelled to locate the remains and the grave of Dangun. So, okay, we found it, here it is, let's build all this to him. But North Korea has not allowed anyone to fact check and do any research and confirmation of all that. Nope, this is it. So we're just going to accept it, leave it good. Kim Il-sung died in 1994. This was built with 1,994 blocks. So kind of in honor of him.
So the whole point of this is to honor
Their founding.
their family. That was the
Yep.
whole point, even though it was 1994.
Yeah, 94, when this guy died, he wanted to show, hey, we've got this history, we've got this longevity, we've got this connection. Guess what? You've got an even greater one. His name is Noah.
And I don't think it's even here.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So that's what's going on with Korea. So that's 2333. So let's get back to some familiar territory. In fact, I'll even zoom out here. Hope no one's afraid of heights. So that's on the lane of North Korea, South Korea, there's Japan and all that there. Give you a sense of where we're talking here. So pretty far spread out from the land of China. So that brings us back to what's going on in Egypt. So we've got this new pharaoh in 2331. His name is Izezi or Jedkari Izezi. So that's from his time frame. So what we have from his time frame that's somewhat unique, this in his time frame during his reign as pharaoh, we've got the oldest record of someone making divine prophecies on a trip they're making. You know, an oracle divining and saying, "Oh Lord, bless this trip" and all that stuff. So got first written records of that. His wife, his name was Setepor, but we didn't know that until 2019. So we are still discovering these things. We are still learning about these things. So anyone tries to tell you it's all set in stone and we know what we're talking about, there's no evidence for the Bible. No, they don't. And the more confident and assured someone is about something outside the Bible, the more you know to take it with a grain of salt. This is our foundation. This is what we know is right and true. And anytime there's been a seeming conflict, the more the information's been found, the more the Bible's been found to be true and right all along. So this is our anchor. We look at everything through the lens of Scripture. One of the things from his reign that was also unique is he allowed other people to start paying artists. It used to be all went through the king. He was the one who authorized and ordained all the artwork and everything. He started to let other people commission artwork, so a lot more artwork got done. So we have a lot more beautiful artwork from this time that got promoted. That also got artists a little more wealthy, being able to go to more sources. So they start building little mini pyramids for themselves. So the whole artistic community is starting to expand now. So speaking of pyramids, this guy here, Jedkari Izezi, his pyramid is named Jedkari is Perfect. I'm not going to put that on my tombstone. Too many people know me. No better. So there is the remains of his pyramid. Just a not very noticeable mound of dirt there. So we see a lot of these have fallen into disrepair. And that just goes to show again, the once mighty monuments of man, you know, compared to an eternal God, don't measure up to much. Yeah, there you go. That is not his pyramid. They keep sticking wrong pictures in there. That's the step pyramid of Zoser. That's, of course, further away. And again, just going on a visual tour, there's a reenactment there. Just get a sense of the world of these people, where instead, these aren't just names in a list in our Bibles here. There's a whole world that they were living amongst. Just as New Testament Christians were living in the world of Rome, here our biblical forefathers were living in the worlds of Shinar in Egypt and all of that. All this was going on around them. That's the Medan pyramid, not the one we're looking at. Nice shot, but not the pyramids we're talking about. Again, different pyramid. So there's some visuals from the area at large. So his pyramid, as it was at a peak height of 172 feet, but the outer casing has been broken off and stolen and it's been left in decay. Originally it was 6 or 7 steps, but now it's down to about 3 steps. Now it's only about 79 feet. The burial chamber actually still held his mummy. And that was excavated in the 40s. They examined his mummy, showed he died in his 50s. So yeah, much shorter lived folks over there. So back in Shinar, Uruk's got a new king in 2326 named Meshe. And now we're going to go check out the new king in Lagash. This guy's name is Urnanshe. That's this guy right over here. Again, notice, even though, as we saw in earlier classes, whole of Egypt society came from Mesopotamia, the land of Shinar. Mizraim, the son of Ham, he went over there. Egypt's named after Mizraim. But they split off, and the cultures have now really gone in separate directions. So here is the king of Lagash now. His name is Urnanshe. Commissioned a lot of building projects, canals, and temples. Helped fight off a rival state named Uma. So what's going on there? Yeah, fire away. Yeah. I believe those are his servants and his entourage, his posse, yeah, they need to do something. Yeah, so interesting, again, different artistic preferences for different worlds, different cultures. And again, more specifically here in Shinar, this is where the Lord's people are growing up and being raised around this whole environment and influence. This is more their world. They'll make trips into Egypt like Abraham and others, but this is kind of what's going on more close to home for these folks. So Kish gets a new king named Kalbum in 2321. And now we go to for their new king in 2305. And his name is Aannepada. And that's from his tomb, the gold dagger there. Yeah. So what do I have here? Yeah, so it's usually not 100% gold. Usually it's an alloy to help give it strength. Good point. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're still in the early Bronze Age. Well, see, actually, right around the time of Abraham is beginning of the Middle Bronze Age. Here's some other artifacts from this time. Yeah, look at the intricate working there. It's a little blurry. I'm still waking up. There we go. Kind of looks like a happy face there. I don't think that was intentional. And well, that's much earlier. So there is that. Do that. Close that. And close that. And back to here. Okay. So moving on, we are almost done with the 2300s. We are now at 2303. New Pharaoh going by the name of Unas. We don't need a large me. So this is now in the Louvre Museum in Paris. So that's from his time frame, alabaster base there of Unas. The cult of Osiris is becoming more and more popular as time is going on here. And she's actually replacing the Pharaoh as the one who guarantees life after death. So let's check out the tomb of Unas. The smallest pyramid of this time frame, the Old Kingdom. So let's see what's left of his pyramid. And lo and behold, another mound of dirt. Yeah. Actually, let me see here. Let me do this. I want to see if I can get a shot of this. Zoom out a little bit right here. So here are some pictures to get us a sense again from the time frame of Unas. Again, we have Eber, Peleg, and Ru alive for this stuff. A little more color, nice to see. Color there. I don't think people pass each other in that hallway. There's a little mapping. So Eber, Peleg, and Ru living through this time at the end of the 2300s BC, looking at the Pharaoh Unas and remains from his lifetime. So that's nearby. Now let's actually go here. Go right there. So again, one of the smallest pyramids, it was only 189 feet by 189 feet, 141 feet tall. But what's so unique about his pyramid here is we have for the first time pyramid texts. The writings on the wall, which is actually a phrase in the Bible from Belshazzar and Daniel. So what's this stuff with the pyramid texts? There are in all 283 magical spells on these walls. This is the most complete rendition of the pyramid text that we have to this day. These are spells to help the king overcome hostile forces and powers in the underworld so that he can join with the sun god Ra, his divine father, in the afterlife. Yeah. Again, the stuff that man keeps making up. So that's what that is all about. Those are spells.
So witchcraft.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I equate.
Yeah. Witchcraft, divination. Yeah. That's a thing.
One truth that said
What's that?
he is going to join some law.
Well said.
It's not where they think they're going to join it.
Amen. Great point. In fact, God said something about witchcraft and divination through the prophet Samuel to King Saul. To obey is better than sacrifice. Rebellion is as witchcraft, insubordination is as divination. So yeah,
And in law, suffer not a witch to live.
there you go. So these are things we are not to dabble in ourselves. We'll be playing with Ouija boards and all that stuff. We don't, and this is important too. Paul tells the church to be mature in our understanding of spiritual things, but in evil to be innocent. We don't need to be dabbling and looking and exploring. We can be aware, but don't dive into, don't get yourself immersed and exposed and basically open a doorway for demonic influence. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. And so that's actually his tomb right there, this guy in this. Some more shots of the area. But again, as was pointed out, a few generations after Noah, a couple hundred years on down the line, Tower of Babel about 400 years after the flood, and we're a couple hundred years after the Tower of Babel now, so 600 years total from the flood. Man is just drifting farther and farther. Well, again, God is being faithful all along. That was just uploaded in April. And that was just uploaded in August. So, okay. So that's that guy, Uruk, and his pyramid, of which not much remains there. So new king in Kish in 2302 BC. So finally, we are crossing the line over the threshold past the 2300s. And in the 2300s, the Hittites, who we read about in the Bible, they're from the line of Japheth, Indo-Europeans. They start entering Turkey, or Anatolia as it's known. And that's where their headquarters would be, coming from there. So we have a new king in Lagash. We'll wind down here before we get to Isaiah. This guy, Akurgal, is king in Lagash. And this is an artifact we have from his time frame. His name means descendant of the great mountain in Sumerian. Took over from his father. He lost some of the territory of Lagash to Umma, so some fighting back and forth. So that is that. And what we're going to get to next week is what I alluded to earlier, the fascinating story of Nimrod's son and the battle over Armenia. So talk about generations. So Shem was born in 3051 BC, a few years, 98 years before the flood. So Shem, of course, his brother Japheth. So going down the lines here, Shem's son, born 2951 BC, 2 years after the flood, Arpachshad. His cousin was Gomer under Japheth. Arpachshad became the father of Shelah in 2816 BC, his cousin Togarmah from Gomer. Well, Shelah gave birth in, not his wife did that, Shelah fathered in 2686 BC, Eber, His cousin was Hayat. That name's going to come up next week. So at the year of the Tower of Babel, 2552 BC, Eber becomes the father of Peleg. His cousin is Armanake. And then in 2422 BC, Peleg becomes the father of Ru. His cousin is Cadmos. So what we're going to see next week is we'll pick up with the story of Nimrod's son and the battle over Armenia with Hayat, who split off from Nimrod's empire, and his grandson Cadmos, and their battle with Nimrod's son in establishing the land of Armenia. So that's where next week we'll pick up. So let's go to now Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah chapter 2. So all these nations are spreading out and doing their all crazy things, as we're seeing here. Where is God in this picture? And where are things going? What is the ultimate result for all of this? Well, we have a beautiful future to look forward to. As amazing and fascinating as some of this past stuff is, especially leading up to Abraham, and we'll really see the Lord do something powerful and amazing with him that we're quite familiar with. We'll see the blessing of that in its time frame. Here is where the Lord has everything to be going. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 1. The word which Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it will come about that in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains, and will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. And many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he will judge between the nations, and will render decisions for many peoples. And they will hammer their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. I wrote a note to myself in my Bible here. This will really happen. There is coming a day when, as verse 2 describes, all the nations, plural, are going to stream to this. Everyone's going to want to come to where Jesus is ruling from in Jerusalem. Everyone's focus is going to be right there. They're going to be saying, come, let us go. In verse 3, we want to be here, that he may teach us concerning his ways. Well, we're seeing all the crazy ways people are going on their own. There is a day coming when everyone's going to want to be seeking the Lord, at least for 1,000 years. Then we know what happens after that very shortly. But here we see there people are rejoicing that the law will go forth from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Please tell us what God says, because that's what we want to do. How popular is that cry right now? No. Could be more popular in his churches, but that's another topic. But yeah, there's a coming day when the outside nations are going to be craving this and desiring this. And all these wars, rumors of wars, all these scufflings and fightings between the nations, that's all going to be done. Yeah, this is actually, yes, during the Christ's reign of 1,000 years, when Christ comes and lands on the Mount of Olives and establishes, and the whole terrain changes, and they've got the new temple from Ezekiel built in that new terrain. Satan's bound for 1,000 years. So yeah, it's going to be a great time until Satan is loosed. He gathers his army, and then Jesus takes care of business there, and we have eternity after. So beautiful stuff to look forward to. Verse 12, here's also some things that are going to be happening leading up to that. Verse 12 of Isaiah 2. For the Lord of hosts will have a day of reckoning against everyone who is proud and lofty, and against everyone who's lifted up, that he may be abased. The king that Brother Caleb referenced in his devotional, Nebuchadnezzar, that happened to him. He was talking about look how great my kingdom is. And Daniel told him, in a year, you're going to be brought down below. You're going to be hanging out like an animal for 7 years. You're going to be eating grass and growing your tails and all that stuff. And sure enough, that's what happened. Verse 19, as the Lord is preparing all this to happen, making a way for this to happen, how are people going to react? Verse 19, men will go into caves of the rocks and into holes of the ground before the terror of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty, when he arises to make the earth tremble. In that day, men will cast away to the moles and the bats their idols of silver and their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship, in order to go into the caverns of the rocks and the clefts of the cliffs before the terror of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty, when he arises to make the earth tremble. 22, stop regarding man, whose breath of life is in his nostrils, for why should he be esteemed? So all the gold and splendor that we're seeing in Egypt and that we'll see in other nations too, men are going to be taking this gold and throwing it in the caves to the bat and throwing it down with the guano because they're getting it out of the way because they just want to hide from God. Wow. And these are the men who are so lifted up in their glory and their majesty and their splendor. But again, elevating man versus honoring God. Big contrast here, which is why I love the admonition in verse 22. Stop regarding man. Has anyone here ever had another human being make them afraid? Yeah. But looking at this, why do we allow that to happen? Jesus said, don't fear those that the worst they can do is kill you. They can kill your body, but they can't do anything else to you. As we'll see, as we're talking about Lazarus in the message and in the messages for this month, death is so temporary. Physical death is the only death we have to ever worry about facing, and that's a temporary one at that. And so if the worst that can be done to us is that, why do we regarding man? Why are we allowing man to have such an impact and an influence on us? I don't care if they're Pharaoh, I don't care if they're president, I don't care if they're the ones picking the teams, I don't care. And I'm telling myself this to remind myself this. I'm interested in the one true God who's been faithful throughout eternity, who knew each and every one of us before we were fashioned in the womb, who knows us, intimately made us, and has a life and a calling and a future and a hope for us. Stop regarding man, whose breath of life is in the nostrils. What does scripture say about that? That if the Lord were to remove his spirit from the earth, all life would pretty much drop dead. He would be moving that breath, that spirit from them. So if man's breath is in his nostrils, there is no other human being on the face of the earth, no matter how big and bad they think they are, who isn't every bit as dependent on God as you are. Now, they might not recognize it, but their very breath, their very existence is dependent upon God allowing it, just as ours is. We who recognize that rejoice in that, and we happily surrender ourselves and submit ourselves and find ourselves fulfilled in the service of the one who holds our breath for us, who carries our cares, where man is going to do his thing regardless of God. Spiritual Tower of Babels are still being built today. There's ultimately, we know where it's all headed, but we see the faithfulness of God. And so here's the encouragement and reminder to us today. Stop regarding man. Don't be afraid of man. Fear being out of sorts with God. Fear not being close to God, who is our shepherd, who takes care of us and prepares all things for us. Chapter 4, verse 2. In that day, Isaiah 4, verse 2, in that day, the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth will be the pride and the adornment of the survivors of Israel. It will come about that he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy, everyone who is recorded for life in Jerusalem. Now, tying that into chapter 2, especially the end of chapter 2 with all that reckoning, for the great and glorious day of the Lord to happen and his beautiful reign where all peace and love and hallelujah to happen, God's got to do some house cleaning. God's got to set some things straight amongst his people and on this earth. And so when that happens, there's going to be a remnant. There are going to be survivors, those that he has brought through. And so that's why in verse 2, the branch, of course, referring to Christ, he's going to be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth will be the pride and adornment of the survivors of Israel. Those who have been faithful to him, including a restored and redeemed Israel, as we've seen in Romans 11, are going to be part of this rejoicing in this new life after all that's said and done in this time of millennium. And those who are left in Zion, remains in Jerusalem, in verse 3, they're going to be called holy. Hey, there's something special here. There's something set aside. There's something godly here. Everyone who's recorded for life in Jerusalem. Well, here's the good news for us. We don't have to wait till then. That's what we're to be now. Holy, set aside for God, being the kingdom people, living that kingdom lifestyle with him as our king now. This place, his house, is a set aside, holy place devoted to him and to drawing closer to him and being the people he would have us to be. Come what may in the world around us, let man do what they're going to do around us. We are here going to be devoted to God and to each other and rejoice in now, not having to wait for then. While we look forward to then, we can enjoy these things now. So with that, any other thoughts, comments, questions before wrapping up for today? If not, go ahead and close out and turn the services back over. Stop share.